Hey there, hi there, ho there. Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Dr. Carolyn Rowley, and I am the Executive Director and founder here at Cayenne Wellness Center. And so, thank you so much for joining us today for our mini seminar on mental health and living well, nutrition and food. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. And so, different background on everyone because to just share some good news that a friend of mine, I'm going to give a shout out, who I've known since first grade, is renewing her 30 years of being married today. And so that's where I'm at in my car in the parking lot of the church, soon to be part of those that renewal. And so Donna Wright, this is a shout out to my friend who I've known since first grade and her husband, Mark. Yay! All right. Hey, if you guys are joining us, um, put your name and where you're uh, coming in from, your city and state, country. Yes, we have people coming in from all over. And so again, I just wanted to say good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. So a couple of announcements. We're excited. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Mark your calendar if you haven't already. So registration is open for Cayenne Center's, even though it's called 16th annual, it's actually been doing this for 18 years, 16th annual Sickle Cell Disease Educational Summit. It's going to be returning again to Torrance, California, which is part of LA, and September 18th through 21st. So you're hearing it right now, September 18th through 21st. And we would like for you all to register and come on down. Okay. And it's going to be fantabulous. If you enjoyed last year, I'm telling you seriously, it's going to be like quadruple effect, right? Why? I can announce it now, but if you happen to have not gone to the SCDAA convention last year, they actually had this beautiful exhibit of Hertz Nazir. Guess what? It's traveling to LA. So if you didn't see it, it's going to be in LA. That's why you want to come. You literally want to come. And you want to come to hear all the good information, but also to be part of something that I think is a once in a lifetime experience, seriously. So that's going to be happening. And so I can't share, but I'm telling you right now, we have a something special that's also going to be accompanying that. And we have some special people. So we want you all to be part of that special summit and to be part of it. History. So thank you. All right, let's see what else is happening. Also, too, besides the summit, why don't you all also just go to our website and go ahead and click so that you guys can always just get our e-newsletters, which is chock full of information. And it has things like on our next Author's Corner going to be the next mini seminar, some research stuff, and so lots of things happening. All right, so I'm excited because we talented academic brains here before, and we brought them back together. So I would like for them to join me and then for them to introduce themselves. So Dr. Claudine Matthews, her story is fascinating. It's so interesting how she got connected to sickle cell, but she spent so much time in her research being able to contribute. So you're going to hear, as she introduces herself, you're going to hear a little bit about that. And then oh my goodness, I remember when Shirley Powell contacted me. I actually remember and participating. And her story is beautiful as well in terms of the many years that she was pain free. Guess what, y'all? Having to do with nutrition and taking care of herself. So she'll be able to share that knowledge, and then they'll be bringing this all together for you because you asked for it. How do we continue to live well with sickle cell in terms of just the mental health and having that joy and then just being happy? But in order to have that happiness, you got to feel it. I think that nutrition, how I feel about nutrition and my 344, and that it works. Good food makes you just feel good. And they're going to actually share that. So without further ado, and I'm going to turn this over. I will be on this for a bit, but then I'll be part of that wedding renewal. And so I can tell you guys about that later. But I'm going to probably more than likely look at the recordings, which you all could do that too and forward to people who are not here. Um, but I really am happy that they're here together to be able to present this information. And you all know what to do. Remember, there is a survey for you to fill out. So why don't we put that survey up, tech team, so that people can actually have that. So we do need for you all to do the survey. And so we'll be making announcements periodically to do that before it ends. And also, if you have any questions, just and let me just go over and see who I may shout out, and we'll actually there we go. Bianca, oh, from Boston. Hey now. Alrighty, thank you. And Tarina. Hey now. And Stephanie Lopez. Hey now. Oh, Rita from Maryland. Thank you. And Tracy Mitchell from LA. I'm in the back in your backyard. Oh, Etta, of course. Well, now, okay, when I say of course, I have to laugh and smile when I think of Etta, because Etta goes to every single session that we offer. So that's a special shout out, Etta from Florida. And I think, and we have, let's see, I thought I saw Tabitha. Hope I'm saying your name correctly. Oh, from Greenville, North Carolina. And do I have the right Carolina? Did I say that correctly? And there we go. So anyone, that's the shout out. And so, Dr. Matthews, can you start and introduce yourself, and then you'll popcorn it over to your other co-moderator, Shirley, and then I'm going to actually have to sign off about 11:15 my time. But welcome, everyone. Welcome. Let's have a good time. Let's do some learning. Put your questions in, and we're going to just keep this going. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity, and it's wonderful to see so many people from different parts of the US. I'm based in London, and as you can tell by the accent, not quite English. Or started out in South Africa, but been in the UK since 2000. But what a privilege to be here! I'm really excited about the presentation that we have. Yes, we're going to be talking about food, but I'm going to be doing something special as well to get you all started off on the right footing, laying a really solid foundation for choosing and making good decisions in terms of our mental health. So I'm a dietitian by background and have finished my PhD in nutrition in sickle cell. Have been doing this for the last 10 years in this area. So really just privileged to have an opportunity to share some of the insights that I have with you, and also then sharing this platform with lovely Miss Shirley Powell as well. We had a blast, I think, preparing for today. So sit back, relax, have pen and paper ready, take loads of notes. I'm going to check what you've learned. Yeah, it's not about just knowledge. It's about knowledge, taking on board the knowledge and how you go about applying that knowledge. So I will be checking, but over to Miss Powell. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Claudine Matthews. We did have a great time. And I'm just so happy to be here and collaborating with you. And I'm thankful for this opportunity that Dr. Rowley and Cayenne Wellness have provided uh, access for the community to get information that can be really a game changer. Uh, I am a warrior myself. I'm 68 years old. At 33, I got the revelation that diet and lifestyle can make a major difference in the quality of life and the degree to which sickle cell uh, can or cannot uh, impact our lives. Of course, there's limitations, but we can do all that we can with what we have to work with. And so, what Dr. Matthews is going to provide is some real foundational tools. I am going to wrap it up with some tricks and tips to help in the success in the journey and in implementing all the tools and information that will be provided to you today. I once I began to see what difference it made in my life personally, I was encouraged to get credentialed. So I did go to school for naturopathy and was certified as a nutritional consultant. Received a degree in naturopathy as well as overall wellness. I am looking forward to sharing what we have with you today, and I hope you can get as excited as we are about it to receive it and begin to implement it. I hope the tricks and tips that I'll provide will give you the encouragement and can do attitude to move forward.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you. So shall we start with my presentation then?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So as Ms. Powell mentioned, we'll be doing sort of a dual approach to this afternoon's session or this morning session. And what we decided to do, what I thought we would do, is to look at the what, the why, and the how. So I will, through my presentation, go through the what and the why. And then Ms. Powell will end up looking at the how, as she said, the tips and the tricks. So let's get started then. So the title for the mini seminar is Mental Health and Sickle Cell Disease Food, Create Your Self-Help Plan. And the presentation that I will share with you will have three parts. For the presentation to have three parts. The first part is giving you context to sickle cell mental health and patient activation. So that's the special thing that I want to share through my presentation today. Once I've done that, I'll go on to part two, which is about patient activation through empowerment. And then part three, I'll end off with the why, which is mental health in the context of nutrition. So let's start with part one. So part one is all about mental health and patient activation. You've heard from Dr. Rowley, you've also heard from Ms. Powell that, we can get information and we can learn and we can read. But if we don't use the information, then that's not really going to serve us, and that's not really going to get us to the point where we can actually benefit or reap the benefit of the information that we have. And so patient activation within the context of mental health, for me, I thought was really an important first step, the what, to get you thinking about how you can be activated to receive, but how you can be activated to use the information and make really helpful choices so that you can experience a really good quality of life. So if we're thinking about sickle cell disease, it is a long-term condition. It is a long-term condition that comes with many complications. So some of you on the call, those of you who may watch the recording, some of you may already be experiencing some of those complications. For you, it may be that you've had a stroke in the past, or someone's living with chronic leg ulcers, or someone's living with avascular necrosis, or you're waiting for a hip replacement. So it comes with a range of potential complications, as I've mentioned, that can impact and affect your disability, but also can affect your quality of life. And so that is a reality of sickle cell disease. And that reality of sickle cell disease can actually have a role to play in our mental health, in your mental health. And some of the psychological issues that sort of sits under that umbrella of mental health in the context of sickle cell disease is stress. So stress is one of those things that, for the patients that I have spoken to over the last 10 years, as I've mentioned, a lot of them will report feeling stress or being in a stressful situation. And that can be because of the condition, but it can also be for other reasons, could be family reasons, could be your environmental reasons. But stress is one of those sort of psychological factors that can definitely have a negative impact on mental health. Anxiety, when you're living with a long-term condition like sickle cell disease, many of you can experience anxiety. And if you're thinking about maybe you've had some tests done and you're waiting for results, or just living with the condition, anxiety around, can I go to school? Can I finish my course? Can I go to work? In terms of absences. So there's a whole range of things that potentially can increase your anxiety living with sickle cell disease. Depression. So many patients, and I've heard through my research that even children may experience depressive symptoms as well. So depression is a real sort of psychological problem that can feed into the overall mental health of someone living with sickle cell disease. Low mood. And again, when we're low mood, that can affect what we choose to eat. And so that is definitely something to consider, but also fatigue. Many sickle cell patients, and I know from the SHAPE study, this is a national study of 1,000 sickle cell patients living with sickle cell disease, and 90% of those 1,000 patients reported to experiencing fatigue. And what we need to understand with fatigue is quite complex. It's not just in relation to the anemia because of the condition, but there's other things, physical, emotional, psychological factors that can also feed into fatigue, and fatigue can definitely contribute to your mental health and how you experience your mental health. And so those things, as I've mentioned now, can definitely lead onto your level of activation or your level of engagement. If you're struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with depression, it may be that you're not able to do the things or engage in the activities that you really want to. And so it's so important that we look at how can we and what can you do to activate yourself in a way so that you can engage in those activities. I mean, Dr. Rowley mentioned about the conference that's happening in September and inviting all of you. It may be that is a goal that you've set for yourself, but at the moment you may not feel activated, or you may not feel like you're up to being able to do that. But I hope through this time, we will help you to be activated enough so that you can engage and that you can, adopt behaviors that can support and promote good quality of life. So that's the end of part one. I hope that's laid a foundation and giving you some context of mental health in relation to someone living with sickle cell disease. And so now I want to move you on to part two, which is the what. So patient activation through empowerment. And what is that, you're asking? So I want to start a little bit with my story, because I, like many of you, and many of you on the call may already be activated, but some of you may not be activated. So I, like some of you who may not be activated at the moment, my journey didn't start off with me being activated. I say to people that if you knew me before 2008, this wouldn't be the Claudine that you would have encountered. I was a completely different person. So looking at my story, I started off in South Africa, as I mentioned, disempowered because I lived under the apartheid regime. I experienced firsthand racism and marginalization. And this led me believing that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't clever enough. I couldn't, Dr. Rowley mentioned this academic, I wasn't any of that. I couldn't see myself like that. But that's how I started. I started out in a deactivated state. But then in 2008, I had an encounter that activated me. So I went to a Women in Leadership conference in 2008. A friend of mine invited me, and I was like, why are you inviting me to this conference? I'm not a leader. But I'm so grateful today that I went, because that conference celebrated the 7 deadly sins of women in leadership. And I suffered from that first deadly sin, which was a limiting self-perception. So that was one of the main reasons that kept me deactivated. So through that experience and becoming aware of what was causing me to stay in a deactivated state, I was then able to sort of take action to change that narrative for me. And as you can see, that 10 years on, 2008, sorry, 2018, I went on to write my first book, my debut book, called Overcoming Disempowerment. So from 2008, I've been taking little steps of activation to get me to the point of empowerment where I felt like I could do something I never thought I could do before, and that was write a book. So you guys might have things, that dreams, ideas that you've got that you thought you could never do because currently you find yourself in a deactivated state. But I want my story to encourage you that you can be activated, you can be empowered, you can be transformed as I am transformed today. And I want to share some of those activation steps with you. So I mentioned my debut book, and my debut book, the title of the book is Overcoming Disempowerment. And as I said, that book I wrote in 2018. So that's 5 years on. And to tell you the truth, I actually haven't done anything with that book before. So you guys are the first ever audience to get me to share or to, hear me share some of the experiences, some of the activation steps that I had to take over this journey to get me to a point of transformation. And I really hope that this would empower you, would activate you to do the same and to be able to step out and achieve like I have been able to achieve. So within my book, I actually share the overcoming model, but I want to reframe it and rename it for the purpose of our presentation as the activation model, because all of this is leading towards you being activated. And the overcoming model in the book I share is 3 parts, a 3-part model. And the first part is seeking. So for me, I had to go on a journey. I had to find out what was those things that were keeping me sort of in a deactivated state. And that is the journey that you will have to go on as well. And as I said, I'll share some of those steps with you. So once I've done that, and once I've embraced the leader within me, I was able to move on to the second step, or the second part, which is the transforming part. And my experience of the transforming part was for me to be able to break through some of those mental blocks that I had in terms of the beliefs that I had about what I could do, what I couldn't do. I had to break through the beliefs about what my abilities, my gifts and my talents. And many of you will have gifts and talents that you've put to the back because you don't believe that you are able to do those things. And so hopefully again today we'll be able to change that and activate you to tap into some of those things that you may have buried, over the last couple of years. And once I've done that, the other thing I had to do as well is to actually embrace my value and worth. So many of us, particularly if you've lived with a long-term condition, but also that long-term condition means that, is marginalized and it's not quite celebrated. You don't always have the access and the support that you need. That can have an impact on how you see yourself, on your value and your worth. And I had to do that same thing. I had to embrace my value and worth to be able to go on to the third part of the overcoming model, and that is to aspire. That is to reach out and tap into the thing that I thought I couldn't, to reach out, to tap into the potential that was buried, because for many years I lived in a deactivated state. So in a nutshell, that is the 3-part activation model. And I'm going to talk you through the 10 activation steps that I've had to go through to get me to the point where I am now. So this slide is all about you. It's about getting you activated as I had to be activated, getting you activated through empowerment using this activation model that I've just talked you through. And the first part for you is to think about, what do you have to seek? What are those things for you that you have to identify that may be keeping you in a deactivated state? And I've said there, to seek first to understand. There's a leadership guru called Stephen Covey, and one of his 7 habits of highly effective people, he says, is seek first to understand, to be understood. So one of the first things that you will have to do through this is to understand what is keeping you in a deactivated state. And I've said there about an oxygen mask. If you're in an aeroplane and there's trouble, there's a problem, the advice given to you is put on your oxygen mask first, so that you can help others. And so the process of seeking is almost like you putting on that oxygen mask so that you can be in a state to help others, but also to help yourself. If we move on to transform, so it's transforming the limitations and the challenges that you may be experiencing now and reframing. So taking a different approach to how you would normally look at the things that may be keeping you deactivated. And then the third part of that is the aspire, activating your potential. What are the things that you want to do that you believe that you can't? And in order to do that, what I had to do, I had to set myself a vision for what I wanted to do to achieve. And my doctorate was one of those. Doing a master's was one of those. But I had to set the vision. And so my advice to you is have a vision for change. What is it that you want to achieve? And then how can you use these activation steps I will share with you to get there? Are you enjoying this so far? I hope so. Hopefully this is making sense and you can already start thinking about what these activation steps are and what you can do differently moving forward. Oh, someone's watching from Nairobi. That's fantastic. So let's go on to these 10 activation steps, starting with part 1, which is the seek part of the activation model. And so you can see the first activation step that's in my book is becoming. Not become, becoming. I'm still becoming. So I had to embrace this whole idea of becoming to be able to kickstart and activate, the how I saw myself and the decisions and the actions that I needed to take to get me to where I wanted to be. And in the book, I speak about looking back to go forward. So I had to stop and think what was happening in the past that was keeping me in a deactivated state before I could actually move forward. And then the second step is be a leader. And this is critical. Remember, I told you that in my story that I went to this Women in Leadership conference, and it was at that conference where the leader within me was activated. And it's developing that leader within that has helped me to transition and get to the point of transformation where I am now. And so for you, that second activation step is to see yourself as a leader. Who sees themselves as a leader? It'll be interesting to see from the chat if you already see yourself as a leader, or is this thing so big that you're thinking, I could never be a leader? I never had a leader in my title. I've never been the leader of this and that and something else, but I was a leader of self. And so I want to encourage you to embrace this whole idea of being a leader of self. And in the book, I speak about taking courage to lead yourself first. And that is a real critical first step to you becoming activated through empowerment. Yes, yes, fantastic. There's a couple of yeses in the chat as well. So that's the first 2 steps, that seek phase of the activation model. And so now I want to pose a question. What is impacting your personal leadership empowerment? And what action can you take? From what I've shared so far, is there anything that you can think about? You may share it in the chat if you feel or you feel comfortable sharing. Or this is something that you can take away with you. Take a screenshot of the picture, and maybe this is something you can do some work on after the session to help you get through this deactivated state into a more activated state. Anything? I'm a leader. Fantastic, Tracy. That's fantastic. I struggled for a long, long time, for almost 3 years after attending that event, to see myself as a leader. And it's wonderful to get to that point where I started seeing myself as a leader, because that really was the kickstart, the catalyst to me being able to take the following activation steps, and I'll move on to that. So this is part 2, the transform part of the activation model. And there's 4 activation steps in this part of the journey. So the transforming part, as I said, is the pushing through those challenges, those things you've identified in the first part, in the seek part, that potentially was keeping you in a deactivated state. And so the first of those 4 activation steps is be informed. And in the book, I talk about knowing the details of your battle. Now, I know that's quite strong language, but for me, when I was writing the book, I really felt that that was the right term to use, because it felt like I was wrestling. I was in a battle. And that battle for you could be, just navigating your health living with sickle cell disease, or maybe you're a carer of someone living with sickle cell disease. And so it's quite tricky and challenging to be able to navigate that. So be informed is an important part of or an important step for activation, because it means that you have to pay attention to what are the steps, what's the detail, what's the information that you need in order to get you to push through and get to the next phase. So the 4th activation step is be prepared. Now that you know, you have to use that information to prepare yourself. And in the book, I speak about suiting up and being prepared for battle. If you think about, just looking at the history, looking at the news, there's so many battles going on. So you can just, take your brain to that. It's a hard and a difficult thing to navigate. But it's important that you prepare yourself, and that you prepare yourself mentally, emotionally. And if you need information, get that information so that you can actually push through and navigate and take the right course of action to get you to the next phase of being activated. So the 5th step, activation step, is beware, be aware. And in the book, I talk about assess the cost of failing to fight. So for me, at some point, I knew the battle I had was navigating. I knew the challenges. I'd done some preparation, but I just didn't have the will, if you like, to push, to fight. And I know when you're living with a long-term condition, sometimes that can be a reality. I'm just so tired of navigating this. I'm so tired of having to fight and ask and push. But I can reassure you that if you don't fight, you can advance, you can retreat. But if you don't push through and if you don't engage, then you are not going to be able to get to the point where you are activated and where you can reap the benefits of all the hard work that you've already done. So be aware is the 5th activation step. Moving on to the 6th activation step, which is be engaged. And in the book, I talk about standing up and fighting your fight. So it's not enough to know, as I've said before, it's not enough to know. You have to use what you've learned, and you have to take action, and you have to engage in this battle, in the challenge, so that you can get through this transforming phase to get to the next phase, which is the aspire phase. And I want to share a little story with you, actually a personal story. So I had my own health diagnosis in 2018. And I had some investigations, and coming away from one of those investigations, I was on the bus home and I was in floods of tears. I was feeling extremely sorry for myself. And I heard a voice say, and I'd just written the book, and I heard a voice say, what's the point of writing a book to help others when you can't apply it to yourself? And what came to mind was chapters 4, 5, or not chapters 4, 5, and 6 of the book. So be prepared, be aware, and be engaged. And as soon as I heard that, I stopped crying. And I share that story to show you the power of when we are willing to push through the difficulties, when we are willing to fight, when we are willing to be prepared, be aware, be engaged, then we can get through those difficult challenges. But we will stay there if we don't. And so that story really helped me to be able to navigate this phase of the activation model to get me to the next. And so the next question then is, what limitations are holding you back and what action can you take? I don't know if you want to, in the chat, share some of the limitations that you may be experiencing at the moment, or that you may have experienced in the past that you've worked through and now in a more activated state. Tracy's saying it took some time. Yes, Tracy, it does take time. It's not a quick fix. I'm still walking through these same activation steps. It's not I've gone through it and now I've arrived. No ways. This is an ongoing loop. I am still walking through step 1 to step 1, and then also all the way to step 6. And so it is something that you will constantly engage. So doing the work now, again, take a screenshot of the question if you're not able to think about it now, if this is something that's completely new, and do take some time afterwards to work through. Etta, thank you. Etta saying it's good information. It was really life-changing information for me, and the reason why I wrote the book, sharing my activation steps, because I wanted others to be able to benefit from the activation steps and how it helped me to live a more transformed life. So thank you for that. So I'll move on. So now, gosh, I feel exhausted just talking through those steps already. And it's hard work, even just teaching it, and so it's hard work taking all of this on board and doing the work. But I can tell you that if you do the work, you get to part 3, which is aspiring to the things that you want to do. Those things, those dreams that you've had, those visions, those desires, that you wanted to do, that you've parked because you've been in a deactivated state. This is the point now where you can actually take those things out again and engage in the next activation steps 7 to 10, to get you to the point where you are empowered and you can take the action to live a more transformed and empowered life. So activation step 7 is be victorious. You've pushed, in the transforming phase. You've pushed, you've worked hard. You said it took some time to get there, but now you're victorious because you've engaged. And so in the book, I talk about enjoying the success of your victory. So important to enjoy the success. You've worked hard. So do take some time out to celebrate your progress, to see how far you've come, because many of us, we do, and then we go on to the next thing. And it's so important that you take time to celebrate. So be victorious. Step 8, activation step 8 is be alert. So now we've been victorious, we've pushed through, we've overcome some challenges, but we have to be alert. Yeah, because life happens. You can get curveballs that you didn't expect. And so by being alert, you are able to then make those adjustments, and so prevent you from going all the way back. So in the book for step 8, I talk about take responsibility for your success. So don't now rest on your laurels because you've had a breakthrough. Remember, this is an ongoing thing. Life happens as a continuous journey. So be alert, enjoy the success, but also be on the watch out, look out for other things that may potentially come and railroad all of your hard work. So moving on to activation step 9, be brave. I had to be brave. Oh my goodness. Certainly with my work in sickle cell and nutrition, I had so many people not interested in what I was doing. And so I had to be really, really brave and just push through because I believed. I had a vision for what I wanted to do. And so the same for you. And in the book, I talk about decide to take courageous action, because sometimes you're going to be in a situation where you're going to be the only one to do something, and you're going to have to be brave and push through and take that action. Yeah, you're going to have to be courageous. I had to do that, and I can believe that for you, that is something that you want to do. And so don't stop there. Take the action, push through to get to the 10th activation step, which is be decisive. And so in the book, I talk about deciding today to start a new beginning. So many of us will get to this point, and when curveballs come, we will give up because it's hard again. And at this point, I want to encourage you to be decisive and to push through and know that this is a loop. Go back to the steps, the activation steps that you've had learned before. Go back to being informed. Go back to being engaged. Go back to being prepared, and work your way, and don't give up. It's so important that that you push through and you get to the point where you can actually enjoy all of the hard work, all of the energy that you've put into navigating life living with a long-term condition such as sickle cell disease. And so that is the 10 activation steps that I share in my book that I have had to navigate and that I am still engaging in, because this, as I said, is a continuous loop. And I want you to think about just going on to the next question. What future aspirations do you have, and what actions can you take? Have you thought of this? Is this something new? I wonder if you can share in the chat if you've got any aspirations that you have for yourself that you are working towards or thinking about doing. It would be lovely if you can share that, but if not, that's absolutely fine. But again, take a screenshot of this question and do your homework afterwards. Listen to the recording and work your way through and see how, by engaging in these 10 activation steps, that you can be activated through empowerment and be able to live the best quality of life that you can. And so in summary, the 3-part activation step, the seek, the transform, and the aspire. So the first phase, seek, is enabling you to discover who you are. As I said, I had to look back to find out what was holding me in a deactivated state. So for you, you have to do the same thing to discover who you are and to discover the leader within and to embrace that. Working on my master's degree in human services, amazing, fantastic. That is wonderful. And hopefully these activation steps will be able to keep you going and complete that successfully. That's wonderful. And then moving on to the transform part is breaking through the limitations. What are those limitations that you've identified before, or maybe on the call now, or made notes that in your book, just listening? Breaking through those limitations is what is going to get you to that third phase, the aspiring phase, where you can activate your potential and get to the point where you can maximize your potential, not just have the dream, not just have the aspiration, but actually take the steps. Like Tarina is saying, you're working on my master's, taking the steps for completing her master's, and then enjoying and reaping the rewards of all of that effort. Tarina, thank you. She says it's encouraging her. And I hope that, just like Tarina, this first part of my talk is encouraging you and motivating you and equipping you with steps, activation steps that you can take on a day-to-day basis that will get you empowered to maximize who you are and just embrace life and enjoy your life. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Amazing. So we've come to the end of part 2. I hope you found that useful. As I said, listen to the recording again if you've missed anything. But now we want to come on to part 3, because I want Ms. Powell to have a chance to share her insights with you as well. And so this is the why. So now we've laid a foundation for activation, and now it's the why. So mental health in the context of nutrition. So I can't talk about nutrition without just explaining why nutrition is important. We've heard already from Dr. Rowley, we've heard from Ms. Powell that nutrition is important. But many people still don't know that nutrition is a real issue in sickle cell disease. I get people asking me all the time, is it a thing? And it is a thing. And I just want to go through the next 3 slides, just giving you some background information as to why nutrition is a thing in sickle cell disease. And so this slide, don't be too sort of bogged down. It's literally just identifying those clinical features that actually result in you experiencing some of the nutritional problems that you can experience living with sickle cell disease, and identify 3 of the main clinical features that you may have heard or heard of in your care. And the first one is chronic hemolysis, and I describe that there as a process of the rapid breakdown of red blood cells. So you know, if you're living with sickle cell disease, because of polymerization, because of low oxygen levels, your red blood cells will break down a lot quicker than someone who doesn't have sickle cell disease. But the consequence of that is that you will experience symptoms like chronic anemia, the fatigue I mentioned earlier. You can have where, because of the anemia, the heart has to work so much harder to pump the blood around the body. And this can also result in something called oxidative stress. You may have heard that term before. And literally what oxidative stress refers to is that imbalance of harmful substances in the cell that can actually damage the cell membrane. And so this is a real problem because of this chronic hemolysis, or this rapid breakdown of the red blood cells for sickle cell patients. And that process can also lead to chronic inflammation. And so you can see with just that one clinical feature, there's a host of nutritional implications that we need to consider when we're thinking about nutrition in sickle. So moving on to vaso-occlusion, or the sickle cell crisis, as you may know it, and that is the blockage of small and large blood vessels with sickle-shaped cells. And this can cause, again, these 2 terms, ischemia, and all ischemia means that there's a reduction in the blood flow because of that blockage. And there's infarction. And infarction means that there's a blockage, so the blood actually can't move through the blood vessels. So there's ischemia and infarction in blood vessels, and this can cause tissue damage that can over time result in organ damage and also chronic inflammation. So you can see there potentially the nutritional implications of the sickle crisis or the vaso-occlusive crisis. So if we go on to the third part, the impaired immunity, and this is, so many sickle cell patients will have, some of them you may have had a splenectomy, which is the surgical removal of your spleen. Your spleen may not be working optimally, and this can increase your risk for infection. Many of you will prophylactically have penicillin as an antibiotic to reduce and prevent your risk, or reduce the risk of infection. So that is a real clinical a problem for patients living with sickle. And the nutritional implication of that is that you have an increased risk of infection. When you have an increased risk of infection, that can actually increase your risk of malnutrition. It can increase your nutritional requirements. And so you may need to take more nutrients during that phase. But also, chronic inflammation is also a consequence of this impaired immunity, because inflammation is a normal part of the immune system. And so you can see, just from those 3 clinical features, there's a host of nutritional implications that is, as a consequence, a direct consequence of the clinical features of sickle cell disease. So I like to say that nutrition in sickle is complex. Because, as I've mentioned before, those clinical features that I've highlighted can result in, for many of you, long-term ongoing chronic complications of sickle cell disease. I've mentioned a few. They're delayed growth, particularly for children, the pediatrics, delayed puberty for the adolescents. And in the UK, some of the patients that I've encountered with delayed puberty, they actually are treated with enteral feeding. So they will have additional feeds via a tube to get them to have that extra additional nutrients to help them transition through this delayed puberty phase. I mentioned about some patients may have ongoing leg ulcers. Some of you may have had stroke or know of people that have an increased risk of stroke. Children may have an increased risk of stroke. And because sickle is a blood disorder, it can affect any and all of the organs and the systems in the body. Pulmonary hypertension, cholecystectomies, which is the surgical removal of the gallbladder because of this ongoing breakdown of your red blood cells. So you can see there's a whole host of complications, and the nutritional implications of those complications, again, I want to highlight there, is that increased nutritional risk that can affect macronutrients, so your carbohydrates, your proteins, your fats, your micronutrients as well. There's a range of vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and I've listed a few of them there. We know already vitamin D is a deficient in sickle patients. Vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin B6, pyridoxine, vitamin B9, which is folic acid. Many of you will have folic acid prophylactically, B12, and some of the minerals there is zinc, selenium, magnesium, calcium, omega-3. Many of these nutrients can be deficient, and this can be as a consequence of the clinical features, as I've mentioned before. So this slide is just to show you that the benefits of nutritional management. And I know for many of you, and I know certainly in the UK, that not many patients have access to a dietitian or a nutritionist or normal or standard nutritional management as part of standard care. But I wanted to highlight with this slide the benefits of improved nutritional status. And I've listed some of them there. A healthy body composition, so having a healthy weight in relation to your height, reducing some of the nutritional deficiencies that I've already mentioned in the first two slides, reducing some of those nutritional risks that I've mentioned as well, staying healthier for longer, having a good quality of life. When you are in hospital, maybe before you would stay in hospital for a couple of weeks, but because you're now choosing differently, nutrition is important, you're making good nutritional choices, your length of stay in hospital can be reduced, your recovery time can be reduced as well. And you can see the other things there, that it can have an impact on the reduction of the side effects of some of the medications that you take regularly to manage your sickle cell disease. And who knows, by doing all of those things, making really good nutritional choices to improve your nutritional status, that can have a positive effect on your having crisis, but also the frequency and the intensity of having this crisis. So there's a range of really important benefits by having improved nutritional status by choosing healthy options. Oops. So that's the background. So now we're coming on to the main focus, which is mental health and nutrition in sickle cell disease. I've mentioned earlier in the first slides that some of the psychological problems that can affect the mental health of sickle patients is the stress. I've mentioned the anxiety, depression, low mood, and fatigue. And so I just wanted to highlight that with this slide. So when we're thinking about mental health and nutrition, and you can see from the slide that what we eat and drink can have an effect on how we feel, how we think, and how we behave. If you think about, you've gone to your favorite team, a football team, American football team, and the team's won, what are the nutritional choices that you make? How do you celebrate that? What foods do you have when you're celebrating a win? But what foods are you choosing when you're celebrating a loss? So definitely food and the drink can have an impact on how we feel, how we think, and how we behave, and vice versa. And when we think about mental health, many a times the talks will include, or the sessions will include, things like sleep, having good sleep hygiene, having good sleeping patterns, paying attention to mindfulness, engaging in positive self-care and exercise. But not many will think about or bring in the impact of nutrition. And there is a growing body of evidence that shows that diet can have a positive impact on your overall quality of life, but certainly on your mental health. Now, I want to ask a question. When you hear the word diet, what comes to mind? And I want to, if you can share in the chat, what comes to mind when you think of the word diet? It'll be interesting to see if people, what you think about diet. Because when I've used the word diet before with patients, lots of people challenged me and said, oh, that's not a good word to use because eating less, lol, yes, less eating, exactly. There's a lot of less eating. And so yeah, so that's, I would say, the misconception. When people see the word diet, they think of the word diet in the context of I can't have and I have to have less of. But actually, I looked at the Latin word for diet, and it's dieta. And actually, the meaning of the word diet in the Latin means way of life. So a lot more positive, not refined and confined to just not being able to eat or eating less. It is actually about a way of life. And that's what I want to leave with you. I want you to reframe that word diet, not through the lens of I have to eat less and I can't have, but rather as a way of thinking about it as a way of life. And a way of life that helps you to build a foundation for long-term health and well-being in terms of your physical, emotional, mental health and well-being. How does that sound? Weight gain. Yes, yes, yes. Weight gain, definitely. And we want to change that. We want to reframe that. We no longer want to be thinking about diet through those lenses. We want to reframe it and think of diet through the lens of this is my way of life. Yeah, and so fantastic. Thanks for sharing in the chat. Starving, oh my goodness, it gets worse. So we definitely don't want you to get to the point where you feel like you're starving, because that's going to have a negative effect on your quality of life, and it's potentially going to keep you in a deactivated state, and we don't want that. We want you to be activated. So we want you to think about it as life and a way of life and all the positive things. But just to complete this slide, so there's other things that can impact on the mental health. As you can see, they're biological. So living with a long-term condition like sickle cell, that can have an impact. We've already established that. Psychologically, psychological factors, we've already established that. Things like anxiety, depression, low mood. Emotional states, that can also have an impact on your mental health, good and bad. And so diet then becomes a cornerstone, and particularly diet reframed as a way of life can potentially become a cornerstone when we're thinking about mental health and nutrition, and thinking about nutrition as more than the sum of the individual choices and behaviors, but as a way of life. Fantastic. So this next slide again is literally just to highlight general healthy recommendations, because when it comes to giving advice around sort of tailored advice in relation to sickle, it's always helpful to know what the general healthy recommendations are. And so this slide gives you that information, and you will recognize the image in this slide, the healthy eating plate, and you will see they identify and highlight a number of key nutrient groups, but also water, the importance of water. And again, if you're living with sickle cell disease, you will know that you may have an increased risk of dehydration that can have a risk for triggering a crisis. So you want to have enough water. You also want to have enough healthy fats. You can see there it refers to healthy fats. You also want to be physically active. You want to engage in physical activity. I, in the week, had attended a presentation where a physio was talking to a group of patients living with sickle cell about the importance of physical activity, not exercise, because again, exercise is sometimes a little bit like diet. If you think of exercise, you think about gym, and exercise, it's better to think about exercise through the lens of physical activity. And so that's what I want to encourage you as well. But if you think about the nutrient groups, so there you can see in that image, it highlights vegetables, fruits, whole grains, healthy protein. And so you can see that in terms of general healthy eating, it is about choosing a balanced diet. It's about variety, eating the right proportions in the right amounts, and it's getting that balance to ensure that we don't, anything in excess, even a good thing in excess is not good. So you want to be mindful about that as well. So what are they saying about general healthy eating recommendations that we need to know? Is the 5 a day. So 5 a day, anybody in the chat? Where are you? I will put up my hand. I am a 5 a day girl. I don't know about you. I'm hoping I'm going to have a lot of yeses. Yes, Miss Powell is a 5 a day girl. I am a 5 a day girl. Please share in the chat. I want to see who is one. I can't even get it out of my mouth. What? No, we need to change that. So I'm glad I started with this general healthy eating. We need to activate you to start changing that 1 a day to a 5 a day. And there's a reason why that 5 a day is important. And the next slide will give you a little bit more context in terms of mental health. So hopefully that is going to give you more of a reason why you need to change to a 5 a day. You need to base your meals on carbohydrates. And I will just preface here that if you have sickle and you have diabetes, then it's being mindful of, yes, you have to base your meals on carbohydrates, but being able to have smaller amounts of carbohydrates throughout the day, not large amount of carbohydrates at one time, because that can have a negative impact on your glycemic or your blood glucose control. But mostly our meals need to have a base of carbohydrates, and you can see in the image there in terms of the grains. Working on it, fantastic. That is great. That means you activated, so we need to get you up from the 1s to the 5 a day. Hopefully that can happen after this presentation. So thinking about dairy and dairy alternatives, I'm aware that within the sickle population, many of you may have lactose intolerance and not be able to have sort of, dairy from animal products. And so, yes, the dairy alternatives, but make sure that it's fortified with calcium so you can still get the benefit of that additional calcium from the dairy alternatives. Having beans, pulses, fish, eggs, and lean meat in terms of your protein sources, healthy protein sources. Choosing healthy fats, unsaturated fats, oils, and spreads. Your fluid. Now, in general, the recommendation is 6 to 8, but we know in sickle that number is more because you have a higher risk of dehydration. So you want to have more, but we also want to reduce that intake of high sugar and high fatty foods, particularly if you're on a low potassium diet. Yeah, great. But particularly thinking about ultra processed foods, the foods that will contain quite a lot of sugar, quite a lot of fat, and predominantly the nutrients you will get from these foods is going to be energy, but it's not going to be the nutrients that we know sickle cell patients can be deficient in, like I've mentioned earlier on: the zinc, the selenium, the calcium, the folic acid, the B12, the vitamin D, etc. So we do want to, we're not saying you can't have, but what we're saying is pay attention to the food choices and choose preferentially to have food options that's going to give you that nutrients that may be missing because of the clinical features of living with sickle cell disease. So, mental health in terms of the brain. Now, I chose to speak about the brain because, again, if you're thinking about sickle cell in the context of mental health, but also the condition, many people may be at risk of stroke. Many may have had a stroke, or many may have silent infarcts. And so the brain is a really important organ, and we want to look after our brain. So the focus of this slide is literally looking at those nutrients that you can choose that is going to help to improve and help your brain to serve you and to work more optimally. So you can see that there's 5 nutrient groups that have been identified that is almost essential, I would say, in terms of keeping your brain healthy to support your mental health. And the first one is the complex carbohydrates. Did you know that the brain actually, 50% of the energy that the brain needs to perform its function, to serve you with all of what it does, comes from complex carbohydrates? Now, I emphasize complex carbohydrates because it's important that you choose the whole grain options. You saw in the image before, I'll just go back to that image there. It referred to whole grains, the complex carbohydrates. So it's important that you choose complex carbohydrates, the whole grain varieties of bread, of rice. Other examples: barley, oats, rye, and hopefully you can see yourself in some of the things that you're choosing already in terms of complex carbohydrates. If not, you need to take special notes and see what you can add so that you can make the change that is needed. So oats, rye, quinoa, nuts, seeds, brown pasta. So you see the emphasis on brown. Who's good with brown pasta, brown rice? Put it in the chat. I want to see, or if you want to be honest and say, I only have white rice. When I did my talk on Tuesday to a group of sickle patients, they were very honest and told me it's all about white rice. So if you can be honest, I'm not judging. I'm just going to activate you so that you can consider making the choices into more complex carbohydrates that's actually going to help your brain health and help your brain to work more optimally and serve. I do more white than brown. Thanks, Jonathan from Tech. So hopefully after today, you can think about how you can change and I do more white than brown. Right. Okay, so there's definitely a leaning towards more white than brown. So hopefully this slide is going to help you change your mind to get you to choosing more complex. I prefer brown rice. Thank you, Shira, for sharing that. She prefers. So take notes, Shira. Well done. Excellent. So yeah, so just I'm just thinking about the time. I need to give Miss Powell her time as well. But so complex carbohydrates, that's one of the first nutrient groups that you can choose sensible options that's going to help feed the health and improve the health of your brain to support your mental health. So if we move on to essential fatty acids, choosing healthy fats, and we saw that that was a recommendation for general health as well. But thinking about healthy fats and particularly thinking about omega-3 fats. And so you can see there that omega-3s potentially the better sources will be from your oily fish, so your fatty fish, and that can be from salmon. I enjoy quinoa, fantastic. Salmon, sardines, mackerel. But there's also plant-based plant options of omega-3 fats, and this that includes walnuts, walnut oil, chai, canola oil, flaxseed oil. So the other fats that's healthy options that you can include in that category there as well is oil from nuts, monounsaturated fats from seeds, avocado. I love avocado, so that's a really good source of monounsaturated fat there as well. But just to highlight the caution that there can be a high level of mercury in particularly fish like tuna. So particularly for pregnant ladies, just be mindful if you are having that, then there is that higher content of mercury. So just be mindful of that. But as you can see, there are a range of options there, healthy fats that you should be choosing. Jasmine are better choices. Shirley Powell, yes, that's good. Good advice. And so yeah, so in terms of choosing essential fatty acids, pay attention, see what I've listed. Are you choosing from that list? If not, what can you do differently moving forward? And then moving on to your animal product, your amino acids in terms of your proteins. Now, amino acids are the building blocks for your proteins. And so it's ensuring that you're getting in all of those healthy protein sources that can provide the body with the amino acids. And particularly the amino acid that's highlighted in the context of brain is tryptophan. So tryptophan is the amino acid that's important, that's needed for the production of serotonin. And serotonin is that good feel hormone. So the serotonin is released when, you read your favorite book. Hopefully, read your favorite book, or you love going to the beach, listening to the waves, or feeling the waves lapping on your toes, or going up to the mountains, or painting, or having a good conversation with a friend. So you want to ensure that you're choosing options that is actually going to help the brain, the body, to be able to make those the amino acids that's going to help the body to produce those good feel hormones. And so again, there's plant-based options, legumes, peas, lentils, beans, soya products, milk. Again, if you take milk in your diet, again, milk alternatives is the alternatives to that. Fish, eggs, cheese, lean meats. So these are all sort of healthy options that can help the body, provide the protein, the building blocks of the body, and also help to improve and maintain a really good quality of brain health. So moving on to the fourth nutrient group, so your vitamins and minerals. Remember, I told you I was going to come back to the 5 a day, and many of you said you were on the 1 a day. And so you can see that if you want to improve your brain health, then you best start upping your 1 a day to maybe towards the 5 a day, because the brain needs those vitamins and minerals so that it can function optimally and support all those many processes that it needs to support you, to support your life, to support, and help manage your condition and so forth. So vitamins and minerals, very important. Fruit and vegetables, variety of colors. Now I know Dr. Rowley has her book with her three steps. So if you don't have a copy of that, look into that and get that, and gives you sort of really good tips as to how to include and work up to that 5 a day in your diet. And again, it doesn't need to be fresh, because I know for some people, depending on where you live, certainly in the UK, that's the case, not many people have access to fresh, or fresh can be a little bit more expensive. And so you could choose tinned, as long as it's not in syrup, so to reduce the sugar content. Could be dried fruit. It could be juices, and it could be fruit and veg smoothies. But remember the portion size. If you're having juice or smoothies, the portion size there is 150 mils. So just be mindful. So don't go drink the whole bottle if you are buying it from the shops, or if you're making it as well. Just be mindful that 150 mil is the portion size there. And then water. So the brain is actually made up of, who knows, what's the percentage of water that the brain is made up of? It'll be interesting to see what people say. Let's see in the chat if anybody can guess. I'll give a minute to see. There's nothing yet. So shall I tell you? 78% water. Yeah, but what percentage? So it's actually 78% of the brain is made up of 78% of water. So we know that the body is made up of mostly water, but our brains. And so we don't, 80%. Okay, yes, very good. So very close, Tarina. And so we can see there that water isn't just important in terms of reducing the risk of a crisis if you're living with sickle, but it's also important to keep the brain healthy, hydrated, and in a good optimal sort of state of health. And so it's important. So how many cups? Yes, wow, it is. I was shocked when I heard that percentage as well. Grace is saying a variety of fruits and vegetables at each meal. Ask yourself, how can I add fruits and a vegetable to this meal? Fantastic. Thanks, Grace. Thanks for sharing that in the chat. I was fortunate to meet Grace online 2 years ago, I think now, in 2022. So it's lovely to have you online as well, Grace. But yes, so that is the 5 key nutrient areas that will help to optimize your brain health so that it can support your mental health. And again, as I said before, if you're not doing the things that I've highlighted in the slide, then do think about what you can do differently so that you can maximize and improve your brain health to support your mental health. So one more slide. So what else can you do to support your mental health? Thinking about some risk factors. So blood sugar levels, some of you, I don't know if any of you online or maybe listening later on have diabetes as well as your sickle cell disease. But if you've ever had low blood sugar levels, you will know that you can feel disorientated, you can feel faint, you can pass out. And so it's important in terms of mental health and just to make sure that you have a really good even blood glucose control so that you can reduce that risk of feeling faint and potential collapse, and also just keeping your mental health, stable and steady by having a really good and even blood glucose or blood sugar level control. I've mentioned dehydration a couple of times, so make sure that you are having the 8 to 10 cups or glasses of fluid, and maybe more as the weather, as it gets hotter. It's a lot hotter in London at the moment, so I'm finding that I'll show you. I've got my water. Forgot my water. I don't know if you've got your water next to you, but make sure that you stay hydrated, because we know of dehydration being a trigger for sickle cell crisis, but we also know that 78% of the brain is made up of fluid, so we want to stay hydrated. Caffeine drinks can also have a dehydrating effect, so you want to reduce your intake of caffeine foods. Certainly don't go for those energy drinks and stuff. That's really not good. And so just paying attention around how much caffeine you're having. Adequate sleep. Yes, adequate sleep is very important as well. Alcohols, for those of you who enjoy alcohol, again, alcohol can have a dehydrating effect as well. So just how much are you having? And if you're having too much alcohol, that can have a wobbly effect, and that can also affect in terms of how, your mental health and just sort of how you interact, decision making, etc. So you want to stay within those healthy guidelines, limits, 14 units of alcohol a week. Medication and food interactions as well, that can have an impact on your mental health. So be sure to read, what the instructions are. Ask your healthcare provider if you've got any queries, or even a pharmacist as well, to be able to give you that support and guidance around if there's any drug or medication food interactions. Who's heard of the phrase that your gut is your second brain? Who's heard of that phrase? Has anybody heard of that phrase? Yeah, because I can suffer from anxiety. I mean, even before coming on here, I was really nervous. And so for me, my belly, it can, I feel the anxiety in my belly. And so your gut, your belly, definitely can act as your second brain. And so just to be mindful of that as well. It can give you some really important clues as to things that can impact your mental health. Stress, as I mentioned, anxiety, that can have an impact on your food choices and on your appetite. So just be mindful about that. And then to end off, some helpful tips. It's so important for mental health and just generally to ask for help. These seminars are put on as a way of helping you, providing information, some guidance, and so that you can be equipped and informed to make really good decisions. But ask for help. And ask for help from your support network. It's so important. I always say this to all of my patients that I see, that to build a good support network around you, you don't have to go through, particularly if you're living with a long-term condition like sickle cell disease, and you're experiencing fatigue and maybe complications, maybe, you're not able to do things for yourself, and you do need a good support network. So that's an important, helpful tip to take on board. Educate yourself, which is what we've said before. Have reminders if you can't remember, if your memory is a little affected because of the sickle cell, then have reminders or ask people to remind you. But important to take daily action. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't become complacent. And remember your 10 activation steps. So before I hand over to Ms. Powell, I want to see in the chat, what can you remember from your 10 activation steps? So in the chat, very briefly, mention some of the 10 activation steps that I spoke about in part 2. Anybody? Be brave. Be brave. There's a lot of be braves. Anything else? Anything else? There's a lot of be braves, which means that is an important activating step to get you to activating your potential so that you can step into doing the things that you really want to do. And again, I can't remember, Tarina shared about her master's journey that she's on. Be brave, Tarina. I want to encourage you. I want to conclude and end of my part of the talk or of the session. Be brave, push through, be informed. But importantly, what I want to leave with you, be a leader. I saw a couple of people. Be the leader of self. Be prepared. Thank you for sharing that. Be prepared, but be the leader. and take these activating steps that I've mentioned earlier on to enable and empower you to, from today, to take action to get a different outcome for what you want moving forward. That's me done. Thank you so much. There's some helpful resources there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll pass over to the capable hands of Miss Powell. Thank you all so much for interacting in the chat. It's been amazing. I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
Afternoon. I don't know if it's the morning or evening where some other people may be and in different countries, but good day. And that was an amazing presentation, Dr. Matthews. It covered a lot. And so, yeah, do feel free to review the slides once they're published, I guess, at the Cayenne Wellness site. So now we're going to talk about creating your own self-help plan to be successful in being activated, transformed, and the last thing. But anyhow, we're going to start with that. So let's just talk about some tips and tools for triumph. I want to start with mindset, just having a state of mind that prepares you for this journey, for this adventure, for taking charge and feeling empowered, as Dr. Matthews mentioned. I want to just quickly share that she mentioned some of the benefits of nutritional management, and uh, Dr. Rowley briefly referenced my own journey. And when 35 years ago, I got the revelation that there was a connection between my state of health and what I ate. And so it's a long, interesting story, but the bottom line is I changed my diet and lifestyle. And for the next, after 6 months, I got rid of all kinds of issues. I had hypothyroidism, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic UTIs, chronic URIs, eczema, of course, chronic sickle cell, regular sickle cell episodes. And I got rid of everything. The only thing that I still contended with was a sickle cell crisis. But for a 25-year stretch, I only had two hospitalizations compared to 2 or 3 a year before the change. As I've gotten older, my 25-year stretch has kind of broken, but I'm still not getting the level of crises that I used to before making these dietary changes. And so, to start with, we need to make a commitment. So the first firm decision the first make the decision. And Dr. Matthews talked about uh, making a commitment, making the decision. And it's so powerful when you have made up your mind. There is power in a made up mind. But at the same time, we don't want to be overwhelmed. Uh, she mentioned that it's not a one and done. It's a journey and it's a step and it's something that we'll traverse for the rest of our lives and we'll tweak it. It's not linear. Sometimes we'll, get derailed or take some side steps, but we never give up. We want to set the intention. So we want to be clear about what we want to do and make that choice. And so you may even want to write down uh, a statement of intention. For example, I choose to make changes to what I eat and some lifestyle changes so that I'll why. And she talked about the why, so that I'll feel better and have fewer crises. Or today, when I meet my friends at the restaurant, I will look for choices that are tasty and also healthy. So set your intentions on whatever schedule works for you and who you are as a unique individual. Daily, I set a daily intention that may have to do with all aspects of my life. One particular thing, I won't overwhelm myself. So today, I set an intention to be present, to give my best, what's available, what I'm resourcing today. that's available to me to do my best. My best tomorrow may be a little different. We want to also have a can do attitude and have confidence. Surround yourself with encouragers. Um, choose to, and we do have a choice about what we think oftentimes. So be eagerly anticipating great outcomes. Get the support you need, maybe an accountability partner, and just consider this a wonderful adventure. So instead of I can't, we want to chop that T off and say I can do it. And we referenced the eager anticipation, and as I said before, there's no quick fix. Also, Dr. Matthews mentioned that, or instant results. So it's a journey, and we want to continue to be eager and not be discouraged because there is no such thing as perfect. So we want to journey with grace and challenge that inner critic that might want to pull out that piece of paper that says, I can't do it with the T. We want to continue to pay attention to what we let roam around in our minds and our thoughts. Also, allow some hiccups. Like I said, it's not a straight and narrow, a one and done. So have some grace, have some self compassion, continue to pick yourself back up and start again. We don't want to have that self sabotaging self talk that will take us off the path, put us in a bad state of mind, have a negative sense of what we can do, a sense of self resignation and giving up. So just be patient, be persistent, and the victory will be yours. Reflect, adjust as necessary. It won't be perfect out of the gate. So just look at it as exploring, experimenting until you find uh, a way of doing things that works for you in particular. So now we want to talk about some tips when you have tight time schedules. Everybody, some people work, children, a lot of things claim our time. And of course, we want to have time for enjoyment and pleasure and other things. So, with that in mind, let me give you some things that might save you a little time to change into a healthier eating pattern. So, first, of course, plan. And that old cliche, those who fail to plan, plan to fail. So, you want to plan and schedule time to purchase and prepare your food. You may already be doing that, but you want to change maybe the content and the substance of what you purchase. Um, you may think eating out will save you time or restaurants, but just actually look at the time that it takes to do that. You have to go to the restaurant, drive there, or a fast food place, park, place your order, wait for the order, eat, wait for the check, pay, wait for the receipt, drive back home. So you can get a lot done at home just in that same amount of time. So, what I like to do when I was super busy and working a lot was to just kind of cut and clean a lot of vegetables from the whole rainbow, from broccoli to cauliflower to carrots to beets to kale, collard greens, mustard greens, all the colors of the rainbow. Uh, Red peppers, just a variety because all of them have different nutritional content. So the rainbow is maximizing the rainbow will give you uh, a great, a greater nutritional variety and balance that all have different benefits. I used to take some of these cut and clean veggies and if I cut and clean a bunch of varieties at the same time, I can saute them, put them on the rice, make a salad, make sandwiches or wraps, put them in stews, omelets, steam them on the side. So there are a lot of things you can do if you do, take a batch and clean them and cut them and have them ready for preparation. Alternative, you can buy some already cut and clean if you have the resources financially to spend a little extra. A crock pot is a good way to save some time. Put all those vegetables with grains and beans, some healthy meats, some lean meats in it if you're a meat eater. and let it cook. You can set a crock pot up and let it brew for hours and hours. A rice cooker has been a great benefit for me uh, in terms of getting all grains, the quinoa, millet, brown rice, black rice, raw rice, basmati rice, jasmine rice, all those things cook perfectly every time. No fuss, no muss, no sticking. So it'll shut off at the right time. Uh, Eat healthy sandwiches, Ezekiel bread or rice wraps with all kinds of fruits and vegetables. And another thing you can do to save time is just saute leftover vegetables, put it in a wrap, pita, tortilla, or over a grain. And so you can kind of multitask. And I used to have a headset on, talk on the phone, and while I'm preparing my food. Another way to save time is make it a team effort. Get your family on board, delegate, share the responsibilities. Or one of the things I did when I lived in Alabama was we had a three or four of us would make a team effort, make large amounts of food together, and that was fun and it saved time. Uh, if at one time when I was working full time, I'm fully retired. I did hire a personal chef, and it was at that time pretty affordable. I think I was paying $65 a week, so that was a great deal. Now there are many online and local options, though. I have a friend who orders from a healthy food delivery service. It's not like ordering from a restaurant but there's a this website will give you some of these healthy meal delivery services. Some of them are foods packaged and you just prepare it, saute it. Some of it is fully prepared. So there's a lot of choices that you can have. And I hope you can take down that website. But if you Google healthy food delivery services, you'll get a list. So let's talk about travel. So let's see how much time I want to leave a little bit of time for questions for myself and Dr. Matthews. If you travel, uh, try to research the place in advance to see where you can get some healthy options. I used to go on a website called Happy Cow. I think it's .com, still in existence. Or I would go to a health food store and maybe just get some avocados and sprouts and some other things to mix up if all else fail. But there are some other options when you're instead of falling completely off the wagon, you can improvise with some of these easy uh, meals, fruits and vegetables together, watermelon, a variety of fresh fruits and fruits for breakfast. Sometimes as a healthy snack, I would have apples, cover it with some almond butter. I talked about the lunch, the avocado sprouts, baby carrots, sprags. You can have that as a quick meal. Bring another thing with traveling, especially if you're going to be on a train or snacking in the car or a plane. Bring some fresh or dried, unsulfurated, preferably fruits, nuts, and other healthy dried foods if you're driving or flying. Try to avoid raw meals at restaurants, especially if you're traveling out of the country, but really anywhere. When I travel out of the country, especially, I like to bring probiotics or grapefruit seed extract or activated charcoal so that I don't get food poisoning or get sick from some substances or something in the food that might make me sick. Uh, if it's a short trip, maybe prepare your own food. I would do that if I was, especially on a road trip. I would take prepare a lot of food, put it in a cooler, pull over to the roadside stops and go to the picnic area, enjoy a healthy meal so that I don't have to get stuck with McDonald's or the other fast foods that are usually at those roadside stops. So let's talk about some tips to ordering healthier at restaurants. Um, Instead of soda or juice, a lot of times the juices, especially in restaurants where you can't read the label, have a lot of added sugar, especially um, corn syrup, which is really toxic. So maybe order water or an herbal tea. And most restaurants nowadays do carry herbal teas. Be careful where you eat. If you choose a buffet eatery, select a variety of vegetables. Mix and match healthier sides as you order your main dish. So sometimes when I've been invited out to a birthday celebration at a restaurant, and it wasn't a restaurant that had particularly healthy main entrees, I would just order a bunch of sides that were healthier. Order creatively. Soup, salads, appetizers could stand in as a full meal. Just mix and match. Now, some quick tips for uh, some culturally ethnic foods. At a Chinese restaurant, you might ask for brown rice or jasmine rice. Those most Chinese or Asian restaurants do have jasmine rice or brown rice options. Uh, Here's some soups that you might want to start with. Wonton egg drop, a soup with mixed vegetables. One of my favorite soups is tom kha, which is like a coconut soup with mushrooms and vegetables, or a hot and sour soup. When it comes to entrees, see if they have a healthy menu. Make sure always to try to include as many vegetables as you can at any restaurant, not just Chinese. Let's see, Mexican, tell them to hold off on the tortilla chips and order a healthy starter instead. Fajitas might be a good choice. A side dish, as a side dish, go for rice and beans instead of the Mexican rice, and maybe have dessert at home. Italian, tell them to keep the hold off on the bread basket. A lot of times, restaurants are trying to make a profit. And so some of the ingredients in restaurant food may not be the same ingredients you will see on the label at a restaurant that may carry healthier brands of food. Uh, so that's a consideration. If you want pasta, maybe order a dish from the appetizer section of the menu or share. But like I mentioned before, always include vegetables. If you want meat, order simple grilled instead of fried, veal, turkey, chicken, or fish. And again, maybe skip the regular dessert and ask for fresh berries or fruit if available. If it's a big occasion and you want to really indulge and have dessert, maybe share it 50-50 with your dinner companion. So in general, ordering fast food tips. Again, grilled fare if you can find it. A lot, even I think McDonald's has some grilled options these days. Order a la carte, like I said, mix and match. Take advantage of the salads, but always again avoid the fried chicken and fatty dressings. Have a fruit salad, a vegetable dish, or a bean dish. Now, let's see. We're going to try to squeeze in this tight budget thing. Some of this might overlap with what we already mentioned. But if your budget is tight, sometimes you might want to change your overall household budget. Maybe look for better deals with your cable service. Maybe try to eliminate unnecessary household cleaning products because sometimes you can get one product that can serve an array of purposes. Uh, Look at how much you spend on personal care. A lot of personal care items may actually have toxins in them. So simplify. I've gotten to the point where I make my own lotion with shea butter and some coconut oil and some essential oil and a little bit of beeswax to make it less greasy. But that's another story. Gums, candies, breath mints. Look at how much you're spending on that you may be able to apply to your food budget. Barter, go to yard sales, thrift stores. If you have to pay for ATM, maybe be more proactive and go inside the bank or look at alternatives. Pay your bills on time so that you don't waste money on late payments and overdrafts. have your own yard sale and maybe take a break from the nail salon. But if your budget doesn't allow for all of those items I mentioned and a healthy food budget, see where you can cut back in the other areas. Uh, as Dr. Matthews mentioned, sometimes buying frozen and vegetables may help with budget. Uh, Store brands, there Aldi doesn't carry name brands, but a lot of times the same company makes the same thing under different labels. So try your hand at some store brands and save money that way. And of course, don't shop when you're hungry. You'll end up buying a whole lot of extras that might not even be healthy. And shop at the discount grocery stores like Aldi, Grocery Outlet, etc. Buy in bulk if you have a family, like Costco's or Sam's Clubs or BJ's. Concentrate on fruits and vegetables and maybe go to farmers markets and negotiate. Um, get non-organic foods on the Clean 15 list, and I'll show you that shortly. But you can go to EW, that's Environmental Working Group .org, and they'll give you a list of foods that you don't need to buy organic, foods that are better to buy organic if you can. If not, try to soak the dirty dozen food list in vinegar for 15 minutes or something. Try to get as much of the chemicals off as you can. Instead of throwing away good food, use it to bring lunch to work. Use it as leftovers. And we talked about washing and chopping a lot of vegetables at one time. Consider more beans and less meat. That'll save you some money. Baked sweet potatoes, broccoli, eggplant, steak. That can be serve as a filler for those are not necessarily high in protein, but you can add nuts and seeds, which are high in protein. Breakfast smoothies, if you add flaxseed, chia seed, uh, those you'll get some protein with your breakfast smoothies. Simple sandwiches, you can look at the list, or you can really be productive and creative and grow your own food or create a community garden or co-op. Raw or cooked oatmeal, I like to make my own muesli, and that's very healthy. You get grains and proteins and fruit. Sometimes I chop up a fresh apple in my homemade muesli. Also, black beans, diced tomatoes, garlic, onions, avocados over rice. That will save you money. Uh, for meat eaters, maybe every now and then just get some sardines. That'll definitely save you some money. So I think these are some really good choices to shop if you are uh, you have a family, Costco's might be good for saving money on bulk items. I love Aldi's and Grocery Outlet. Aldi's does not have name brands. Grocery Outlet does. Trader Joe's has some good deals on certain things. Walmart, for particular items that are healthy that other stores might not carry, I go to Sprouts. As I mentioned, along with Costco, there's BJ's and Sam's Club. So this is the Clean 15. You can go to the ewg.org website. This Clean 15 is a list of foods that are not as chemically treated and they're safe to buy non-organically. So these don't need to be, and none of these really need to be organic. So that would be a way to save some money if you're organic pros. These are the dirty dozen, the ones I said if you can't buy organic, you want to soak them as much as possible, wash them, because they're the most chemically treated with insecticides, pesticides, and all of those things. Definitely for the dark leafy greens, always get organic if you can. But the bottom line is fruits and vegetables. Clean them if you can't buy organic, but don't eliminate them. So now, when you get fresh produce, here's the PLU codes that you see and what they mean. You want to avoid 8. That's genetically modified fruits and vegetables. You want to avoid anything that starts with an 8. Organic will always have a 9. conventional 3 and 4. Okay, so now appliances to help you get creative in saving time and implementing new menus into your diet, into your meal plans. Maybe make sure you have all the appliances that you need. A blender is excellent for a lot of things. I've made soup in my Vitamix blender, hot soup. I have a juicer, a food processor. You can make your own healthy desserts. I make my own brownies using a food processor with 4 healthy ingredients. Air fryer is a tremendous time saver and quick, easy way to fix food without frying it with grease. Dehydrator, I love. But you, of course, I'm not saying buy all these things, but these are just some ideas that you can get some healthy meat. I make a lot of dried fruits and vegetables. I make my own kale chips in my dehydrator, and I try to store everything in glass if possible. You can get those from the thrift shop. But like I mentioned, at a minimum, a good blender will take you a long way. So let's see. I think I'm about wrapped up, and we have a few minutes for some questions. But this is just a quick and dirty sample of some transitional ways to introduce dietary changes. So when Dr. Matthews asked how many fruits and vegetables people were eating, they said one. So you can start to add more fruits and vegetables gradually and substitute. So, for example, week one, at least 2 servings a day, and then maybe cut back on meat and dairy and add more vegetables daily. Add at least one for raw fruit daily. So you're continually adding and substituting. Replace white sugar with pure stevia, monk fruit, coconut sugar, raw honey. Replace white flour with whole grains, millet, quinoa, amaranth, oat, almond. Flour nowadays is made from all of those, even cassava. So there are a lot of different choices now for flour substitutes. Instead of white table salt, try Himalayan salt or unrefined sea salt, kelp, liquid, liquid amino. So you are about to play this pivotal role in positively transforming your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So give yourself a hand. Yay! I am excited about the transition that we're all going to make. So, with that, let's see. I think we have time for some questions. I want to say also, real quick, some comments. Dr. Matthews mentioned anxiety. And one of the things that can uh, just inherent in sickle cell, I just learned that if your body is struggling to get sufficient oxygen during sleep, your body can go into activate your sympathetic nervous system, which means fight, flight, freeze, fawn, uh, which releases a boatload of cortisol. And so if you wake up feeling a little anxious, that might be what's behind it. And there are things that you can do. You might want to mention it to your doctor. Uh, it may be that you need to sleep with oxygen. That's what I found for myself. That was triggering, activating this cortisol release. So uh, I think that's it. So now we can open the floor for questions. I don't know if you had any comments, Dr. Matthews.
Wonderful. I
Oh,
mean, I like.
one
Oh,
last thing. Everything that Dr. Matthews mentioned, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, beans, all of those are mood enhancing foods. So everything else is depressed, causes depression, anxiety, fear, worry. It exacerbates those difficult emotions. So actually, food and the brain connection, because you're feeding your body. The uh, you're the construction workers for the building that's your body, and so you use tacky materials, it's going to have defects. So you want to have a strong construction, a strong um, body, a body enabled to have vitality, more vitality, increased quality of life. And so
Mm,
that those definitely make a difference. The food choices that you make.
that's great. Yeah, that's that. I mean, I've been taking notes, and I said this before as we were preparing. I've taken some notes on the practical side and the practical implementation side of things as well. So that was really wonderful, Ms. Powell, just to talk us through. And I think even just thinking about, because we don't always think about the eating out aspects and how we can make little changes to increase and improve the health of the options that we, in terms of eating out and so forth. So I think that that's really important as well, just little tips that you can act on to try and reduce, improve the enjoyment of the experience, but also get the benefit and the health benefits from that. So fantastic, thank you so much. I can see there's a question from Tracy. I'm on a low potassium diet. What do you suggest? A lot of foods that you mentioned I'm not able to have due to the high potassium level. It is a tricky one. I would imagine that you probably have something to do with your kidneys, and that's why you're on. So I was on the Shira as well. Bananas, yes. So potassium particularly is high in your fruits and your vegetables. And the one of the easy, quick recommendations they say is to try and boil the vegetables to try and leak out the potassium content of those foods. But it is quite tricky to find a healthy balance of getting in those foods that we've mentioned in terms of particularly the fruits and vegetable side, and get the nutrients that we need, the other nutrients that we need from those foods. I was going to ask, so again, depending on if it is because of renal function and depending on your level of renal impairment, um, they can sometimes sort of allow a certain amount of potassium. So is it potassium was 5.3? I'm eating blueberries. Okay. So, I mean, usually what would happen is we would, and I'm not an expert on renal diets by no mean, but 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 yeah, depending on your level of potassium and the underlying cause, if it's to do with your kidneys not working, secondary to sickle cell, proteinuria, and that sort of thing, then it is about looking at what else in your diet can provide the range of vitamins and minerals that can ensure that you get the nutrients that you need for good health. I'm just going to look at so I mean, looking at the list of foods that contains potassium, I can understand the difficulty that you're experiencing, because you're going all the way from lean meats, salmon, yogurt, so your dairy, then you're going to your beets and your greens, bananas, you've mentioned, cantaloupe, peaches. So it's looking at the Eat Well guide, looking at the all of those food groups. If I go, oh, I don't have my presentation now, but if we go to that image that we had, let me just go back. Thank you. So yeah, looking at this, so it's again the variety. As we said, not all food provides all the nutrients that we need in one particular food, but it's looking to the other food groups and ensuring that if we can't get the food and the potassium because of the potassium content, are there other options that you can get from the other groups that can make up that deficit for you. And
I just put in the chat a link that gives you some healthy choices in the fruits and vegetables category that are lower in potassium.
yeah,
So, and it is a very personal matter, as Dr. Matthews is referencing all the variables. So this is just general information.
yeah,
You might want to check with your doctor, but this is a fairly reliable resource of healthy foods that are lower in potassium.
In potassium. And I mean, this is partly why I am fighting the cause for nutrition in sickle to be integrated into standard care, because for me it's so important that if you're living with sickle cell disease and you have a nutritional implication, problem that like what you're describing, that you are able to access a dietitian or a nutritionist or someone that's trained in this, that can give you that tailored advice. Because this isn't a once-off. You're living with this condition, and it's going to be an ongoing thing, and you want to reduce the what's the word I'm looking for? The generation. What's the word I'm looking for? The worsening effect. To worsen the functioning of your kidneys, and so it's important that you do get access to either your healthcare professional or someone like a dietitian, maybe asking if they can refer you on to someone that can actually give you that ongoing support and tailoring of your diet to ensure that you get that the mix of nutrients, for overall good health. That's one of the reasons why for me it's so important that the work that I do, I continue to do, because the vision I have is for all sickle cell patients to have access to nutrition as part of their standard care. And so hopefully Shira and what was it, the other one that said about the about the potassium, that you can get someone that can actually talk you through and come up with a plan that you can stick to and not cause other nutritional deficiencies, because you have to cut out so many other foods that contains quite a bit of potassium.
For anyone who may not be aware, I do work with Cayenne Wellness to provide consultations
Okay.
for diet and lifestyle, but also there's Vanessa Joseph, who provides wellness coaching. So if you have a plan and you need help working it, you may want to reach out to your community health worker to put in a referral for you to get the wellness coaching, to get, because we zip through a lot of plans and how, but someone who can more take you by the hand and help you to come up with strategies and have a level of accountability as well to be successful in your transformation to optimize the quality of your life.
Yeah.
When I made those changes, I had a lot of limitations, but I was kayaking, hiking. I had a testimony that was amazing. I had so much energy when I made those changes. Now I've gotten older, like I said, it's not where it was when but it's still, I feel, still experiencing the benefits of the diet and lifestyle that I have.
So I can see, Shira, you said that the doctors recommended SVS sulfonate to bring it to normal. I mean, I'm not obviously not familiar with the products in the US, but if your provider is recommending that, then I would say to consider that. But I would also say that, as Ms. Powell said, there is some help available through Cayenne Wellness in terms of supporting you with nutritional choices and just general health and well-being. So I would highly recommend that you tap into those resources. Whilst we don't have access to dietitians or nutritionists as part of your standard care, to tap into the resources that is available to help to give you that additional and ongoing support that you may need. It's so frustrating for me, that patients, when I do a talk like this, I give information, but then the patient has to go away and apply. And then when you have questions at home, there's no additional support available to you to help talk you through and support you through that. So it's wonderful that through Cayenne Wellness, there's this additional support that you can tap into if you're in the area, and obviously if you qualify for that, to get that additional support. Yeah.
If you have any questions, we have a few minutes. Well, I don't know how you feel about going over. Our time officially ends in about 1 minute, but I think we might be willing to stay on a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions. Any burning questions they want answered? Okay, I'm glad that. Thank you for your feedback, Tarina and Shara.
It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed the session and the engagement from the audience as well. It really helps when you've got engagement and from the audience. So it's been wonderful for me to be on again. And I want to hear some of the success stories, of what you've done. I don't know how I'm going to know, but I really hope that you take away all of the goodness that you've got from the session, from both my session and from Miss Powell. And just how can you add to what you're already doing, and how can you maximize sort of your quality of life and improve your mental health so that you can have a really good sort of level of living, energy, and enjoy and plan and think about things that you can do, things that you thought you couldn't do before. Think about what you can do moving forward. So I'm glad we could provide just a little bit of help, and bases that you can work with and take away with you.
Absolutely. And just see yourself, visualize yourself as victorious. Surround yourself with encouragers, not discouragers, or you create your own narrative. Don't buy into the hype. We want to transform, not necessarily conform
Mm-hmm.
to what the script has been written, right? We want to write our own script and come out of the narrative that says we have so many years to live, we have this, that, and the other. So I want to encourage you to live to the full measure of your life. Not exist, not survive, thrive, live fully. I hope these tools have made a deposit in your account for that.
Definitely. Great. A follow-up is due, says Shira. Well, this is part one of a three-part series, so hopefully you'll have something more to take on board moving forward. So yeah,
Okay, thank you
excellent.
all so very much. We both enjoyed teaming together and sharing this knowledge, bouncing off each other. And so we're glad that you were able to join us today.
Thank you.